It's 4:45 and we're shutting it down. Yeah, forgot to pull out the camera today. First day of August, 8/1. We started work today at 6. We'll be getting done at 5. A nice 11-hour day. We did 10 container movements. We drove 160 miles. Now what happened is the big box over in Kailua said we don't need a driver, so they called up the driver and said don't need to work tonight. And then later on they called us back and said when your driver comes in can he just pick up we have a dunnage can and we want to take it to our off-site warehouse, and while he's here he can move around some containers for us. But meanwhile, they've already told the driver that our company's already told the driver that no need to come in. So they said, hey Max, can you go take care of that for him? So we just finished up the big box over in Kailua. We went over there, we moved around just about every one of their containers and picked up a load of dunnage, took it over to their off-site warehouse, and they decided they didn't want to work, so we were supposed to stand by and offload, but they went home, so I guess we'll do it tomorrow. But that's logistics and transportation for you. So I thought, being the first of the month, I've always had a little bit of a tradition of telling my story. I mean, I'm a 63-year-old truck driver in Hawaii. I moved here when I was 27. How'd that happen, you know? And for 10 years I drove tour buses here in Hawaii. One of the most asked questions was, are you Hawaiian? And so I've always had a little bit of a liking to tell my story, so that if you're listening to me and what I have to say and think about stuff, at least you know who you're talking to or listening to. Because sometimes you know, you never know. But I was born in Washington State 63 years ago. When I was 5, my mom married my stepdad, and family relocated. Me and my younger brother Kelly, we moved off to the U.S. Virgin Islands, which is a U.S. territory located in the Caribbean, just a few miles away from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, they speak English, and that's a U.S. territory also. I mean, Puerto Rico, they speak Spanish, and that's a U.S. territory also. But in the U.S. Virgin Islands, everybody spoke English, or broken English, you might call it. The U.S. Virgin Islands was bought from Denmark, or Holland, or Denmark, I guess, back during World War I. So that's how that territory became. But my stepdad, he worked for the power company. My mom, she worked for a nursing home. And that's basically where I grew up. I moved there when I was 5. I left there when I was 21. So I tell people, when you cut me, you'll never know it, but I'll bleed West Indian, because that's how I think. I think and look at things from a West Indian frame of mind, because that was my upbringing. I lived in St. Thomas for 7 years. And then I lived in St. John for 6 years. And St. John is, you know, they called it the American Paradise. It's just a little 14 square mile island with 1,000 people on it. And that's where I spent my teenage years. A bit of a juvenile delinquent, me and my younger brother. And 3/4 of the island is national park. So the 1,000 people that live on the island live in 1/4 section of it. And so everybody knows everybody. When you're a troubled teen, everybody knows it. Couldn't get away with anything. But luckily a police officer by the name of Malcolm took me under his arm when I was 16, taught me to hunt and fish, and that kind of got my head straight a little bit. And then later on in my junior year, a guy by the name of Klein, he owned Klein Electric at the time, he became my surrogate father, sort of, and kind of straightened me out, taught me work ethic, and I wasn't afraid to let me have it when I needed it. So I learned to work hard, and most people in the Caribbean do work hard. In fact, it's a saying that everybody in the Caribbean works two, 3, 4 jobs. You know, you got to have a lot of jobs because it's the hustle, you know. So 21, a couple hurricanes come along. I think it was David and Frederick. I can't remember exact names. I think it was David and Frederick. They were a week apart. So the Virgin Islands gets a lot of hurricanes, a lot more than Hawaii. In fact, I've been through the eye of a hurricane 3 times. The hurricanes visit the U.S. Virgin Islands almost every single year. They get close, but every now and then they go right over, and that's happened quite a few times. And I think it was Hurricane Frederick and David, or David and Frederick. And the first one came along and it wiped out the place where I was working at the time. And then a week later, the second storm came along and went through the eye of that hurricane, I think, and took the roof right off the place where I was living. So at that point, I was living on my own, and my mom and my brother and sister were living in New York. So I left the Virgin Islands at that point because I didn't have a job, didn't have a home, and relocated to New York. And then I ended up living in New York for about 7 years. When I was 27, actually when I was 23, one of my best friends from high school calls me up. We've been keeping in touch. This is back before smartphones. This is telephone. Calls me, guess where I am? I said, I thought you drove up to Fairbanks to go to school. He says, yeah, I'm in Hawaii now. He says, you got to come and visit, man. It's just like New York City with palm trees and beaches and girls, and you're going to love it. And he knew it, because we've been talking, that I hated the winter in New York. For, you know, the few years I was, first couple, 2, 3 years I was in New York, I thought it was fantastic. It was everything the U.S. Virgin Islands wasn't, except for the winter. The 3 months during the winter where you went out and just froze and lips chapped, and, you know, hurts to breathe because I like to work outside. And yeah, so I came to Hawaii for the winters. Came in 83. I think I came back in 84. I'm not sure if I came in 85. I'm sure I came in 86 though. And then I moved to Hawaii in 87. I moved to Hawaii with $700 and a girlfriend. And that relationship lasted about 2 years here in Hawaii. And she's still here though. I haven't seen her though. And became, you know, in Hawaii, I didn't really know the lay of the land. I had one friend that lived here and a girlfriend that came with me. And I thought it was going to be a lot like the Caribbean, because I grew up, you know, in a tourist town. But tourism in Hawaii is year-round. Tourism in the Caribbean is seasonal. People come during the winter months. They don't come during the summer months. What happens in Hawaii, the tourists come year-round. It's 90% occupancy year-round, but the rates go up and down. So the rates are a little bit cheaper now than they are during the wintertime. A room in Waikiki right now is like $380 a night, as opposed to wintertime where it's $500 a night. And so I thought it was seasonal. So when I was trying to get all these jobs, I was telling them, yeah, I'm here for the season, you know. And that's the last thing that they wanted to hear. They wanted somebody to be here year round. And so it took me a year or two to figure that out. My best friend, who basically called me up, he was the manager of a 1-hour photo, so he got me a job as a cashier at a 1-hour photo in Sears. And I was working there one day, and a lady comes in. She was the safety officer for a tour bus company, and she had all these bus accident pictures, and so she needed to get her film developed. So I developed the pictures, and when she comes to pick it up, I go, wow, how long you been working with the bus company? She said, I've been there since I was out of high school. We were about the same age. And I says, man, what does it take to be a tour bus driver in Hawaii? And she goes, why, do you know how to drive? I said, well, I drove trucks in New York. And her eyes lit up. She goes, you come down, I'll have you driving tour buses by the end of the week. And I'm like, really? It's that easy? She said, if you've driven trucks, tour bus is easy. It's like just a big Cadillac. And so that was a Friday. Monday I went down there and after work, and she says, yeah, just come every day after work at 5, and we'll put you on a bus with a bunch of other trainees, and you'll practice for maybe an hour, 2 hours over on Lagoon Drive, and then end of the week you can start working whenever you want. And so that's what I did. Every day after work I'd go down there, we'd drive the bus up and down Lagoon Drive. Like, I think there were 5 of us in the class, and learned how to drive a GMC, which is a 4-speed manual bus. They call them dinosaurs because you had to double clutch it in order to shift it. You had to clutch it, get it out of gear, and then you had to clutch it in a real quick way to get into gear. And the synchronizations were so rough that if you missed the gear and got caught in neutral, you had to turn the engine off in order to get it back into gear. And so it's one of these weird buses that you'd put it in first, and then you'd hit this little switch, and then you put it into second. That would be reverse. So it was a pretty challenging bus, but I drove trucks, so I was up for the challenge, and so I drove tour buses for 10 years. I learned every tour, drove every type of vehicle they had, and I really enjoyed being a tour bus driver. I learned a lot about the islands, a lot of education there, learned all about the cultures of Hawaii. Hawaii is one of the most diverse cultures to be found in the United States. Ethnically we have people from all over. And then first Gulf War comes along, I get laid off. I go from working 5 days a week and like 75 hours a week to working 2 days a week and less than 20 hours. And so I saw a reflection of a homeless person. I thought they were in the yard, but they're actually right. It's just a reflection of the person in front of me. So anyway, the tour bus driving was great, but it was affected by everything economically. It went up and down, busy, slow, busy, slow. And so when I got laid off for just 2 days a week during the first Gulf War, that's when we went into Kuwait. Right across the street was a garbage company, BFI. So I went over there, and they were looking for roll-off drivers, and got hired on as a roll-off driver and drove roll-offs for 2 years, and then moved up to the front load division and drove front load for 5 years, and so garbageman for 7 years. At which point I was pretty beat up physically. Garbage is tough on you. It's a good 10 to 12 hour day sometimes, and you're pushing cans all day long, and it's like every one of my joints would ache. This wrist to this day aches all the time from garbage, pushing cans. Knees would hurt, get stuff in my eye all the time, with my sinuses and stuff. It was pretty miserable work, but it was hard work. It was I had 20 hours of overtime every week, had big paychecks, and no energy to spend any money. So my savings was doing really well. I tell people, who want to get ahead in Hawaii, go be a garbageman, because you'll make good money and you won't have the time to spend it. Yeah. But so a friend that I was a tour bus driver with was a safety officer here at this company. He said, yeah, why don't you come over here and I'll help you get your tractor trailer license. He had just moved back from the mainland where he was a trainer for Swift. And so he thought he was going to start a little side hustle teaching guys how to get their CDL, tractor trailer license. So that was his plans. So I came and started with the company, and 2.5 years of driving box trucks and straight trucks, I go, when am I going to be a tractor trailer driver? You know? And so I just took it upon myself to teach myself every day. Get off, I'd jump in the yard goat with the permission of the company, and I just organized the yard. I'd move cans around the yard. And by this time I'd had plenty of driving experience. I just have never driven tractor trailer. So get off at the end of the day. If there was somebody still doing work, I'd jump in the truck with them and then go ride along and learn what I could on my own time, sort of. And after about 3 months, I talked to my friend. I said, you know, I think I'm ready to take the test. And he said, okay, we got to work on a few things, and we'll get that set up. And this is what I've been hearing for 2.5 years. So I went to him and I says, no, I already scheduled the test. I just need you to take me down with the truck to take it. And so, what? Well, we haven't covered this, we haven't covered that. So I went down, took the test, nailed the skills test. When I did the road test, did perfectly, as far as I know. And then the pre-trip, I failed, because I'd never really, nobody taught me how to do that and what to expect. I just read the book, and I thought I could retain what was in the book and apply it, but until you've actually run through it, you know, like a rehearsal of a dry run sort of, and hear yourself saying what's in the book and like, pointing things out and doing. So I went back and I figured I'd study up on it, and went and took the test again, failed. So now I'm mad because I got the knowledge, I just don't know how to present the test because nobody's taught me how to present myself. So now I'm going around to all the drivers, what about this, what about this? And what helped out a lot was the guy who was giving me the test says, you know, I know you know this stuff, it's just that you just don't know how to tell me, and you don't have to what to cover. So he gave me the test itself. He says, there's 116, 118 things on here that you have to check off. If you can memorize this, and then I can check all those things off, and it'll be no problem. So I got busy and I studied hard for a week, and then went back, took the test, and he said, you nailed it this time. So it took 3 tries, but I finally got my CDL license and tractor trailer license. And by that time, they were the dispatch couldn't wait to get me on the road, because I knew where all the customers were, new driver, lots of skill in the yard, so I could, you know, if you get good in the yard here, you're excellent out on the road. And so been driving tractors now for close to 20 years. I enjoy the work, but I'm 63, I'm ready to retire. My wife has convinced me to work to 65 just because she knows I enjoy the work, and that physically I'm in pretty good shape, and that health-wise I'm in much better health than she is, and she doesn't really want to lose the medical. And so what I did back when COVID started up was I went from working 5 days a week to 4 days a week, kind of a semi-retirement. It's kind of like being on a 3-day weekend every week, you know. So I take Wednesdays off, and that's kind of how I got here. The YouTube thing started almost 9 years ago, because I was ready to retire at 55, and so my plan was to learn how to do YouTube, because I hate technology. It just takes up so much time in people's lives, trying to figure out things, you know. I'd rather just go do something. I'm a doer. I'm not a real thinker as far as you know, I'll plan a little bit to do something. But if I go on vacation, to me a great vacation is one where you get a ticket to go on a plane to go somewhere, you rent a car, and you have no plans whatsoever, and you just jump in the car every day and go see what happens. I love that type of, you know, let's see what happens. My wife, she has to have everything planned out. So we help each other. But yeah, so the idea was just do YouTube, because I'm the only one that lives here. My mom lives in New York with my sister, My brother was living in Florida. My dad was living in Washington State. I was trying to keep in contact with all of them. I figured, hey, I'll do a YouTube channel. They can see what I'm doing every day, and I'll talk to the camera like I'm talking to them. So I'm like explaining what I'm doing, and then I'm also including kind of some of my personal stuff, what I'm having for dinner every night. Well, since the YouTube channel has started, Mom's now 90 years old. She doesn't know how to get on YouTube. My dad passed away a few years ago. My younger brother passed away a few years ago. So now it's just whoever's watching it, I guess. But it's interesting because after 9 years, I'm getting close to where I might have to call myself a YouTuber, because the channel is all set up for a monetization, where you make a little money from YouTube. But the only way that happens is if you have 1,000 subscribers. And I don't want to be a YouTuber. So I'm kind of dreading the day that would happen, because then I might have to say, I'm actually making money at this. I guess technically I'm a YouTuber now. And then once you start making money, you want to make more money. So it's I don't know. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But that's my story. I'm sticking to it. And it's time to go home. Thanks for watching today. Aloha.